Next, prepare to be enchanted by Doug Meetup Leader and Microsoft MVP, Kristen Hosman. Today, she will showcase her session, 5 of my favorite features in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Please stick around after Kristen's session for a live Q&A.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristen Hosman, and today I have a very special treat for you all, and that is that I'm presenting live from Warsaw, Poland today, where I've asked one of my favorite people in the whole world, KB, to monitor the chat. So if you guys have any questions throughout this presentation, go ahead and put that in the chat. And at the end of our session, KB will help me answer some of those questions. So let's get started on 5 of my favorite features in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. First, a little bit about me. My name is Kristen Hosman. I'm the president of Mount Evans Consulting located in Denver, Colorado. And I'm also a 5-time Microsoft MVP specializing in business applications, specifically Business Central. Fun fact, we have less than 70 Microsoft MVPs designated to Business Central worldwide. So that's pretty exciting. I'm also an advisory committee member for Doug Dynamics User Group. You can find me on my blog site or my LinkedIn, things like that. So make sure to connect after the session. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. All right, a little bit about today's demo. So everything I'm going to be showing you today, you can find in version 25 of Business Central. And why that's important is because we are going to be talking a little bit about our favorite topic today, which is Copilot. All right, so let me show you how you can tell what version you're in for Business Central. If you have access to the Business Central Admin Center, you can come in here and you can see what version your environments are. So we're going to be playing around today in my sandbox environment, which is version 25. If you're within Business Central and you want to look at what version you're at, excuse me, within Business Central, you can go to the help and you can see in there as well what version you are. So you can go to the help and support, and then under the troubleshooting area here, you can see that we also are working in version 25 of Business Central. Okay, and since we are talking about features, I did want to just show you the feature management page within Business Central. This is a page that's telling us some of the upcoming features and then also tells us when things will be enabled. If something is available for you to try, you can go ahead and enable that as well. Good rule of thumb, though, is to play around with new features within your sandbox, and then also keep in mind if you have any customizations, custom PTEs, ISV solutions, things like that as well. Some things you just want to play around with. Okay, so let's jump back over to our PowerPoint. And I'm not going to be spending a lot of time today in PowerPoint, but I am going to be showing you a slide per one of my favorite features, and then we will jump into Business Central for me to kind of talk about it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Copilot. And if you were just listening to the keynote, you got a brief introduction of these. So Yannick was talking about Copilot within Business Central. And here we have several different Copilots available to us within Business Central. So we have the marketing text suggestions. This is going to be great if you're using the Shopify connector, things like that. We also have the bank account reconciliation, analysis assist, sales line suggestions, e-document matching, number series suggestions, and item substitution. Those are all things that are available today worldwide. For the US only, we have the Copilot chat. Okay, so I've selected a handful of these that we're going to jump over into Business Central and review. Let's first talk about the Copilot and AI capabilities page. And what this page is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to turn on and off different AI functionality. So if your company has kind of banned you from using AI, ChatGPT, things like that, there is a window within here, within the settings that your administrator can go into to turn off Copilot and AI capabilities. So we can see here that these ones here are coming from Microsoft, and then these AI capabilities are coming from an extension that we have. So these are coming from WebSand. This is a ISV solution that we have installed in this specific sandbox, and that's why we're seeing these. So as the AI and Copilot functionality starts to become more widespread and your ISV solution partners start enabling it for their solutions, you'll be able to come in here and turn it on, turn it off, things like that. Keep in mind that the Copilot is not going and scouring the whole World Wide Web. It's just looking at your BC instance or your BC environment. So if you're asking specific information, it's going to look at just your company, okay? You also can click on how do I govern my Copilot data. That is going to bring you to a Microsoft branded website, the Microsoft Learn website. And from here, we can learn all about Copilot and Business Central. And then also on the left-hand side here, we can click on some of these other features that are coming out. So in this example, chat with Copilot, and we get a little bit more information about that specific functionality. And I will say that Microsoft is doing a better job at getting the documentation updated as soon as possible. So if you've used the documentation or the Learn website in the past and you haven't been happy with it, just give it another try, because Microsoft has been putting a lot of time and effort into working with that. All right, so let's jump into Business Central and let's take a look at the marketing tech suggestions. And for this example, we're going to be using a Business Central environment that has Hot Wheels set up. So this is actually an environment that my son created. Business Central is very easy for people to use. I think he was 11 at the time. He came in and he put his whole Hot Wheels collection into Business Central, and then he even spun up a Shopify trial as well. But I am on an item card here for a Cyberpunk 2077 Porsche, okay, 911 Turbo. So great Hot Wheel. My son wanted to sell this on Shopify. Okay, so he put his collection out there. He wants to sell it. So he needs some marketing text. Okay, now this marketing text has been out here actually for a few versions prior to 25. And we can see that there is one in here already. I'm just going to go ahead and say edit on this one. And I'm going to say suggest marketing text. We're going to go through and generate some new ones using Copilot. Okay, so Copilot is looking at several different things within the item card. So not only the description, but it's also looking at the item attributes. And you can choose to include and not include things as well. You can also choose your tone. Let's go ahead and be a little bit more upbeat. We want the tagline and paragraph. And we also want innovation. That sounds about right. Let's go ahead and generate this. All right, so here we have an auto-generated Copilot or AI tagline and description of this item. Okay, I can also come in here and I can change things. I can say I just want a tagline. Let's go ahead and regenerate that response, different things like that. So this is going to be great for your marketing team, your sales team, whoever is really managing your website. This is going to be great for. We can go ahead and say keep it, since we do have Shopify enabled. On the next update for Shopify, this new description is going to come over. Keep in mind that just like any other Copilot, you can use it just to assist you getting to a specific point. And then from there, you can come in here and you can actually modify as well. Okay, so just use it to get you to a point, and then from there you can update it and make that change. All right, so we have some new marketing text there. Let's go ahead and just pick a different item that doesn't have marketing text on it yet. All right, so let's go ahead and do Deutschland design. Let's do this Audi. Okay, who doesn't love a good Audi? So draft with Copilot. And still we're getting that same functionality that I saw before, but for this one, we didn't have anything in there available. So there's not enough information available to draft the text. Okay, so this is probably because on the item card, let me just go ahead and cancel that. On the item card, we don't have any item attributes. Okay, so the more information you can put on item cards, the better when it comes to using the marketing text. All right, let's switch gears. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at the bank account reconciliation Copilot. And this happens to be one of my favorite Copilots in Business Central. Okay, so here I have a bank reconciliation started. And again, version 25, we now have the Copilot up in the top right-hand corner where previously it was in our action bar. From here, I haven't gotten anything matched yet. So historically, we'd be able to come up to match and we'd say match automatically. We would put in our tolerance in days and we would say, okay. All right. And it worked okay. There were some issues with it along the way. Now, Copilot goes a step further because now it's looking at dates and descriptions and it's taking a lot more into account. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say reconcile. And now Copilot has been activated. And from here, it's going to tell me that the system auto-matched 15. So this functionality right here is what you have today, the auto-match functionality. But what's extra is now that we have the Copilot enabled, we have the Copilot matched as well. Okay, so the auto-matched is the functionality you have today, and then the Copilot is the Copilot. If I click on the auto match right here, it's going to do the auto match for me, and it didn't do anything specific with that Copilot line. Okay, so if I go back up to reconcile and say no for overriding things, we're going to get that Copilot match again to come up. Now we have a couple more things in here. So this is really great for those scenarios where on the bank side, you have one line, but maybe on your subledger side, you have multiple lines. Copilot's trying to figure out how am I matching, one bank transaction to many subledger transactions. So in this scenario here, I can go ahead and say keep it, and then that is going to be in there as well. Now, is it perfect? It's getting there. Okay. It's better than the functionality today, but you can see here on this line right here that I have selected, it didn't really do exactly what I wanted it to do. So I guess, kind of just a caution I will say is that it gets you to a point where maybe you don't have to go and click every single transaction to match manually, but you still want to go through and validate the data and make sure that it is doing exactly what you want it to do. Okay, but Copilot for bank accounts, bank account reconciliation is here in 25. Actually, that was there in 24, version 24.5, I believe as well. All right, the next Copilot we want to look at is the analysis assist. Okay, so for this one, I'm doing it right from the general ledger entries window. And this analysis feature has been here for some time now. Okay, the analysis mode. But for the Copilot, we now have a Copilot button over here to the left of that. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to select Analyze List. I'm going to get a prompting. And here I'm going to tell the system, create, actually, you know what? Instead of me typing, you guys, let me go grab my text that I had already prepared. So I'm asking it to create a pivot table by month, year, and sum of totals in a column format. All right, so historically, we probably would do this in Excel. We'd come into the general ledger entries window, do some filtering, some sorting based on what we're looking for, kick it out to Excel, and we'd have to do it in Excel. But today with analysis mode and also with Copilot, we can have the system do it for us. Okay, so up here in 2023, we see the caret off to the right. Let me go ahead and click on that. Now we see by month, okay? So I asked Copilot to sum it by month, by column. Okay, so 2024, again, we have some things over here. Again, this is just sample data in this company, so we're not seeing a lot of relevant, useful information, but we can see here how Copilot is able to assist us with our data. Now, let's do another Copilot. And I'm going to say here, show me Starlink. Oh, if I can spell, Starlink transactions. Okay. So here it's going to use the description that was posted within the general ledger and is pulling back 2 transactions. Okay. So if you have users that need to be able to quickly filter and sort by transactions, the Copilot for the analysis mode is a great option. Oh, one more thing while I'm here. This is kind of new, the Starlink transactions. I'm going to click on this down caret here, and we have a copy link. And the interesting thing on here is it kind of reminds me of like sharing within, we'll say Excel, Word, SharePoint, things like that. But link to Starlink transactions has been copied. And I have a link here. I can tell the system, link to the current company, whatever company I'm in, do not link to a specific company. But the important thing here now is that we can share these analysis views with other users pretty easily. All right, so the next one here is sales line suggestions. For this example, I have a sales order created and we're selling to Doug, okay? And here down in the line section, we now have a Copilot icon, all right? So in this scenario, think about the times where a customer emails you an order, okay? So I have an order here from KB. KB sent me this order earlier today. It's in my email. I'm just gonna go ahead and copy his email. I'm actually going to leave off his URL just because that does give a little bit of an issue in this example. But KB emailed me that he would like to order 5 chairs and that his office manager liked the Paris one that he found on our website. For his company, he also needs a new boiler. The one is down. Ooh, I hope it's not too cold in Poland without some heat here. So we need to get KB some chairs and a boiler. So within the sales order, I'm going to go to the Copilot and I'm going to say suggest sales lines. And from here, I'm getting that prompt screen where I can type things in. Now, I am going to go ahead and paste what KB emailed me. And then I'm going to say generate. From here, the system is going through the item list based on what KB emailed me, and we can see that it's suggesting the Paris chair. KB specifically asked for 5 of them, and then he asked for 1 boiler. Now, if it suggested more lines and one you wanted and maybe another line you didn't want, you would just update the quantity and then say insert. Once we say insert, this is going to insert it right to the sales order. Okay, there we go. Now we have some other things that are really fun with Copilot in here. So there is some prompting where Microsoft has given us some prompts to use. So we can say, copy lines from a specific order, copy from a posted invoice, a last posted invoice, things like that, right? We can also come down here and add new items as well, okay? I think the most exciting part about Copilot on the sales line suggestions is that we can now suggest from a file as well. So if your company is receiving purchase orders from your customers, in theory, you'd be able to download that purchase order and you'd be able to import into Business Central based on that file. Again, I will say that this is pretty new. I like to say it's in like its infancy stage. So very new, you want to monitor it and make sure that things that are being imported in are correct. So making sure item numbers, quantities, dollar amounts, if there's any sales tax, discounts, things like that, you still want to verify that. But Copilot, you can see here how Microsoft is bringing Copilot into the system to help these repetitive tasks become a little bit more easier. All right, so now that we've looked at the sales line suggestions, let's go ahead and look at the chat, Copilot chat. So this is only available today in the US version of Business Central. And I did enable it off to the right here. So in my version, I have a Copilot button up here on the top right to the left of the Tell Me button. And you can see some history here. Okay. But when I first open it, I get a little bit of prompting here. Do you want to look something up? Do you need help explaining or understanding something? Or maybe it's a how do I? So in this example, I had asked the system, help me understand how to create a sales order. So now Microsoft or Business Central or Copilot, however you want to look at it, is going to the Microsoft Learn documentation and trying to summarize that information. This is great for new users. This is great for UAT during the implementation. But maybe where it lacks currently would be your company-specific processes. So if you have a specific process written out today that you want your users to follow, of course, Business Central or Copilot is not aware of those specific policies or procedures. So that is not reflected here. So again, this is great for when you're learning or kind of those one-off, how do I do something? Now, I'm not really going to prompt Copilot very much because it is sometimes a little bit slow, I think. So I have these two scenarios here. The next scenario is how many sales orders are open for Doug, the customer. Okay, so this is a pretty simple query where it's going and it's looking at a specific table and then it's doing a filter by the customer name. And we can see that it did find one open sales order. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that sales order and it opens it right up for us. Okay, so here's our order with that chair in the boiler that we did on the sales line suggestions. I'm going to go ahead and close Copilot now because we are done with what I was going to show you when it comes to Copilot. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is my next favorite feature is deferral templates. And for this example, I'm going to give you more of the purchasing, but I will show you the sales as well. So in this example, purchasing could be you get an invoice for like a 12-month subscription and you want that to be amortized over a certain number of months. So Microsoft refers to this as a deferral. I refer to it more as a prepaid expense. But nonetheless, however you refer to it, we get the same result. Okay, so let's jump back over to Business Central. And first we need to set a couple things up. So within Business Central, I'm going to search for the deferral templates. And I can see that I have 4 of them set up. Now, the important thing here is obviously the code, because the code is going to be what the user selects when it comes to either purchasing deferral, sales deferral, or even a general ledger deferral. But the most important thing here is going to be the deferral account. So in this scenario for support, my prepaid account is $16,200. Okay, my rent prepaid account is $16,100. Okay, so if I get an invoice from my landlord a month early and I need to pay it by the end of the month for next month's rent, I can come in here and say, okay, our prepaid account $16,100. We want it to amortize out in a straight line method. We want it to happen the beginning of the next period. You can see there's several different options here depending on your company policy when it comes to prepaids. And then we also have a period description. Okay, so let's go ahead and just look at the BC support plans as well. This one, I have straight line beginning the next period with the number of periods 12. Okay, so this is just really the setup for the deferral templates or prepaids, right? Where this gets used in the system then is on the transactions themselves. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and create a purchase invoice. And I'm in accounts payable. So I'm just going ahead and adding the vendor number, vendor name. Okay. So that invoice header really is what I'm selecting here. If BC wants to work today, let's see. There we go. All right. I'm going to go ahead and enter a vendor invoice number as well. All right. So my header is completed. I'm going to come down to the line section. Now for this vendor MEC, I'm using what's called recurring purchase lines. And I have it set up so that when I create a vendor invoice, it always is going to ask me if I need to insert them into the lines. This is actually another one of my favorite features, but because I only could pick 5 of them today, I had to leave this one out. But here's a little tip. If you have a vendor that sends you a recurring invoice, nothing changes on it except the date and the dollar amount, go ahead and set up recurring purchase lines. So in this example, I'm going to go ahead and say get recurring purchase lines. This vendor is billing me today for BC licenses and BC support. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select both of those lines. We're not being billed for consultant fees on this specific invoice, so I'm not selecting that. Let's go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and hide my fact box just to get a little bit more real estate here. All right. So here we're being billed for 12 licenses, essential licenses. We're being billed for, these are actually team member. I didn't update that on my reoccurring purchase line for the description, so that's why it didn't come over correctly. But this is a team member license, and then we have our support plan, okay? So there's actually a field that we're looking for called deferral template, but out of the box, it doesn't show automatically. So what we need to do here is go to personalize and add a field. Now, personalize affects only the current user logged in doing the personalization. If you want to make changes for a profile role so it affects everybody, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to make that update at a profile role level instead of a personalization level. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my line section. Okay, and let's go ahead and close personalization. All right. So again, this invoice is billing me for yearly amounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the deferral code and I'm going to say this specific one, we know it needs to go to a specific prepaid account number. We don't have one specifically out here for licenses, but I know that the BC support plans can get me where I want to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to update that for all 3 lines. Okay. Now, the important thing when we're working with deferrals is that on the left-hand side over here, this GL account, so account number is 64600, that's going to be where my expense goes. And then the deferral is going to tell us where it needs to get moved to when we post it for the prepayment. Okay. So if I come up to deferral code right here, and I click on the ellipsis to the right, we're going to get an example or a sample of what it's going to look like when we post this. So what happens is when we post it, all the money or the expense is going to hit the expense account, but then the system's going to automatically do a reclass from that expense account and move it into prepaids. That's kind of step 2. And then the third thing that's happening is the system is automatically doing the amortization for you. So it's doing the credit to prepaids, the debit to expense. Okay. So that's what's happening on a vendor side. You can come into the deferral schedule. You can change the number of months you want it deferred. You can change the start date. You just need to recalculate. But this is going to be what's happening. Okay. So let me go ahead and just put my entity code in here, make sure it's in there because that's required. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a preview posting on this vendor invoice. And I'm missing another dimension, entity. Oh, we need that at the header level too. Let me go ahead and select that. All right, let's try that again. All right, so here we can see GL entries 76. Whew, that's a lot, right? But that's because it's doing all of those entries that I just spoke about, right? So we're seeing it. Let me just filter this by the date or sort it by the date. But we're seeing everything hit like right here, these 2 lines. We see it hit the expense and then we see it come right back out of the expense and then get moved to the prepaid. Okay. So these are all what's kind of happening here. It does still hit AP as well, right? Here's the AP. So if you're kind of tracking here, excuse me. But then what it's doing is it's taking it out of prepaids every single month and it's moving it to the expense. So it's really doing everything automatically. Typically what I find when I work with users is that they're managing prepaids today within Excel, and then every month they're manually moving it out of prepaids into the expense. So this actually saves you a ton of time because it does everything for you, okay? This functionality for deferrals happens to also work for like deferred revenue. So if your business bills things out, but you don't want to get hit with that revenue in the wrong period, you can set up a deferral template for that scenario as well. And as well as GL deferrals too. So if you're doing journal entries, let's say AP posts something straight to the expense, it didn't get caught, but you want to fix it so that the system automatically does the deferral for you, then you can do that in the general ledger or the general journal as well, okay? Now, where the magic happens here is that we have several reports, okay? So if I come into my chart of accounts and I filter it to show balances as of today, let's go ahead and get this to refresh. So we're gonna say prepaids, prepaid. There we go. And then I'm going to add a date in here. So we want to filter totals by a specific date. We're going to use today, for example. Okay. We can see that prepaid rent has some money in there, prepaid expenses. These are all debits because it's an asset account. Okay. So as of right now, this is our balance for prepaid. So think about end of month, you're pulling a balance sheet and your manager says, hey KB, what is making up this balance in prepaids? You can come to the system now because we're using that deferral functionality, and you can come into the system and under go to reports and analysis, we have some reports here. Okay, so the one we were working on is specifically the purchasing one because we were dealing with vendors. Okay, so I can come in here and say purchase deferral summary. You can add a new page per vendor if you want. You can send it to Excel, Word, PDF, all of the things, right? But we're going to go ahead and preview it for this example. And let me go ahead and just zoom in a little bit. Whoops, not that much. There we go. Okay, so here we can see the remaining amount deferred. So if I go back to my chart of accounts and I look at account number 16200 specifically, because that has to do with just the one vendor. We don't have a lot of data in this test company. We're going to see that the balance as of today is 22,000. So again, at month end, quarter end, year end, when you have to give things to your tax accountant, they want to have that detail of what that balance is made up of. So these reports right here are going to help you along the way. And again, you can do this on the sales side. You can also do it at a general ledger side as well. You're just going to have to run multiple reports based on the module that you entered the data into. Okay. So there we have the balances, and that did tie out. All right, we are moving right along. My next favorite feature is the review GL entries. And the best way to explain this is if you're an accountant and you're doing like manual reconciliations in Excel, stop that. Nobody likes to do that, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to come into the chart of accounts. And on the account card, we have some functionality, okay? So this is not new in version 25. This has been around for a couple versions, but we have this review policy, okay? And because I have Copilot enabled, I can say, hey, Copilot, tell me about the review policy. We'll let that run for a minute. But we have a couple different options here. Out of the box, when you first import a chart of accounts, things like that, it's going to default to none. We're not going to have a review policy, okay? But the second option is allow review. So you can mark entries as reviewed without needing to balance the debit and credit, okay? So this would be great if you just want to go in and say, yep, I validated it, it's correct, we don't need to do a reclass or move it out. Now, the magic one, I call it the magic one, but allow review and match. What this is going to do is it's going to allow you to match the debit and the credit. So think of like payroll taxes, when you're accruing sales tax, things like that, where you have a liability hit, and then maybe you have a payment going out. They should technically, the debit and credit should tie out, right? It should net zero. So that's where the allow review and the match comes into play, okay? So in this example for American Express, as I pay my vendors, if I pay them via my credit card, I have a payment method set up so that it automatically shows paid, and the money shows paid from this liability account. And then when I get the American Express invoice, then what I do is I go through it and I say, yep, this invoice hit the credit card, this invoice hit the credit card, things like that. But when I'm coding that invoice, I'm coding it directly to this account. So the debits and credits can wipe each other out at the end of the day. Okay, so allow review and match. And let me go a step further. From the chart of accounts page, when you select your account number, you go to home and you say review entries. Okay, so this is what it looks like. And if you don't like the way it looks, personalize it, hide some fields, different things like that, right? But let's say that I have in here things that need to be matched to each other. Okay, so here I have 22,000 with 47 cents. Here, up here, I have 22,000 with 47 cents. These combined net zero. So these things wash each other out. And I know that they wash each other out because I made the entries, but also one was a debit, one was a credit, one was a payment type thing, right? So when I have these selected, I can click on set selected as reviewed. Now, auditors are going to love this because it puts in the user's name that's logged into the system. It puts in the date and the time that it was reviewed. Okay, so now you have this audit log that someone can look at to see when things were done. But again, when you think about replacing, manual Excel reconciliations, the system actually probably has more controls, more audit features, things like that than even Excel does today. If you try to match things that are off the dollar amounts. So like right here, I have 3,500 and 3,000. Obviously, there's still $500 there that doesn't net to zero. We're going to go ahead and get an error message. Okay, so they were not marked as reviewed because the credits and debits do not match. Okay, so now you can do many transactions. So if I did have a $500 one in here, which I don't happen to have for this example, but if I did have a $500 transaction in there, I could select as many transactions as possible to net zero. Okay. Now, one of the other things that I like about this is that I can come in and I can tell the system hide reviewed entries. So every single month, kind of just on autopilot, you want to come in here and say, hey, hide things that are reviewed because I don't care about them. And then you're kind of left with what you have left to do. Okay. So that is the review GL entries. All right, the next thing is the standard journals. Okay, so in this example, I'm really using payroll and month-end entries as the example. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to general journals and I'm just going to open a batch. Okay, now if you are today using Excel to copy paste entries into BC, then you know that can get a little tedious, right? You have to go into Excel, you have to put everything in there, and then you have to copy and paste, right? It actually is pretty fast. I make it sound like it's this daunting task when it's really not, right? But there is a concept here called standard journals. And what you can do is you can save those templates that you're doing today in Excel. You can save them in Business Central. So in this example, we're doing our payroll entry and I have the template saved. The dollar amounts change every time you run payroll. So now you have to manually go in and do them. Okay. But what if the amounts don't change? So think about the entries that you're doing every single month where it could be like a reclass, it could be a prepaid thing, something where the amounts don't change. You can save the standard journal with amounts as well. Okay. And just like Excel, you can come in here and you can modify it and say, you know what, every month I'm having to change that dollar amount, new year, new amount scenario. You can come in and modify these layouts as well, or these standard journals. So to save them, you're going to go actions, functions, save as a standard journal. If it's a new one, go ahead and give it a code. If it's just a modification to the one that's already saved, then you can just come in and select that one and it'll say, hey, it already exists. Do you want to override it? Yes, we're going to override that. Okay. So great functionality for the accountants that are doing a lot of repetitive things at the end of the year. All right, I'm just doing a time check here. I got 2 minutes left on my 45-minute presentation. So the next thing and the final thing that I will be showing you today is the statistical accounts. So if you were on Dynamics GP prior to coming on Business Central, then you know that statistical accounts were in GP, but they didn't exist in Business Central until sometime last year. Okay, so now we have statistical accounts. So in this example, let me come up here and just type in statistical accounts. So in this example, my company wants to track the average weather per month. Okay, so maybe your company does really well in the summer months, and that's because it is warmer outside. Maybe your company serves people food and you want to manage how many covers you do per day, per month, things like that. Or FTEs, machine hours, part-time employees, full-time employees, things like that, right? So in here, what we would do is create a new statistical account, give it a code, a name. We also can say if it's blocked or not blocked, things like that, right? But what this allows us to do is it allows us to utilize what's called a statistical accounts journal. And from here, I can come in and I can say, okay, as of today, okay, we have, kind of think of it as like a beginning balance, like every single month, you're probably only going to make an entry either for like the net change or the full amount. Amount's not really a good word to use here, I don't think. But really, we're just going to say, hey, we have 1,500 FTEs, or this month we have 1,450. And you can even go by entity. So if you have multiple companies that you want to have that in there and track it for, you can do that as well. Okay. We're going to go ahead and register. Okay, so it's not a post, it's a register instead of a post, what we're used to. And now what we can see is that the FTEs, we have 1,450, okay, for the current month. And I can click on that and I can see the history of the entries and things like that too. So it works just like the general journal does when it hits a general ledger, except this is a totally different module. They don't really speak to each other at all, okay? There is also some functionality in here for allocation accounts. I don't have time to cover that, unfortunately, but just know that that does exist. Now, where the magic of these statistical accounts come into play is that on your financial reports, we'll just use the income statement, for example, but at a row level, you can add your statistical accounts down here. So instead of it being a posting account, we're going to select statistical account, and then we're going to select that total account. So very similar to a general journal or, a general journal account, but a little bit different because it's a statistical account. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this income statement, and we're going to run it. We're going to run it just for the year so it captures that journal entry. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and let's see. And it's not going to work because we're on a live demo and that's the way it works. Okay. But you get the idea here that you can set up those statistical accounts. You can see it in here as well. There's probably something wrong with maybe one of my columns here, but it will show up there. I promise. All right. So we are at our time. Actually, I'm a little bit over, but if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. And I'm going to ask my co-pilot, KB, do we have any outstanding questions that the group would like to hear the answer on?
Yeah.
All right. So we have a few. When will co-pilot chat be available globally? I don't know. I would think, Microsoft wants to get it out there pretty fast, so they're working really hard on it. So I would, at this point, we're looking at 2025, possibly 2026. Can you use columns that are not on the page for Analyze View when using Copilot? And the answer is yes. So you can come into general ledgers here, and we have a ton of columns off to the right here that necessarily weren't there, but you can add columns and things like that as well. Is there a way to enter budget amounts for statistical accounts? Ooh, that is a great question. Let's see if I can get back there. All right, statistical accounts. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, unfortunately. Part of me wants to say yes, and if it is correct, if I'm correct in my assumption, because we don't know. KB says he doesn't know either. But if I'm correct in my assumption, let's just do it here. No, it doesn't look like it. I'm going to say no, but I'm not 100% sure. All right, the next question is, how do I not pay my landlord? I mean, you could just tell him that you don't have a good accounting system and he's not getting paid. How about doing this with a letter of credit or cash against documents? This was around review GL review. I'm not sure. I guess I would need more information on that, like a scenario. Do you know if you can suggest lines with file and if it can be PDF versus Excel? Yes. So the idea between the uploading the file is that you're going to be able to use multiple different file templates. So it could be PDF, Word, Excel, things like that. Microsoft is using OCR to read that document on the back end to get that into the system.
Now Excel only or CSV.
Excel only right now?
I think so.
Okay, KB says Excel only. It's a good thing I have my own co-pilot here today. Okay. No other questions? We have another question. Okay. When using deferral templates, do all the future deferral periods need to be available for posting? Yes. Okay. That is a great question that I did not answer. So you need to have the accounting periods open and within the general ledger setup window, there's also allow deferral posting from and allow deferral posting to. So I always tell people that the top two here, allow posting from and allow posting to, should be like a current period. And then the allow posting to for the deferrals should be out 12 months. So if you have deferral templates that allow people to post 12 months out into the future, then you need to make sure that they can post that far out. You can also make that rule. So I'm going to call this the company rule. And within the user setup window, you can make exceptions to that company rule. So if you have users that you don't want to be able to post into the future and things like that, then you can dictate that here in the user setup window as well. Can deferral codes be included in recurring line suggestions to prevent? No, unfortunately not. They cannot be included. But if you have like sales, recurring sales, you can set up recurring sales lines, and then you can also create recurring sales invoices there as well. So I did not cover that. So we are running out of time here, but if you have additional questions that I didn't answer, I will migrate over to the Business Central breakout room, and you'll catch me over there as well. And I can spend a little bit of time answering your questions over there as well. Thank you everyone for joining. I do appreciate it. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day.